Hello everyone, this is your old, bald, tubby, self-isolating Shakespeare fan from Glasgow, specifically Milton Campsie, reporting in again. I'm going to do another one of my little Shakespeare read-alongs. I'm going to do it slightly differently today. I'm going to, usually I would kind of ramble on for about 10-15 minutes and then actually do the speech I'm going to do. This time I'm going to do it slightly differently. First thing I want to do here is, well, first I'll tell you which one I'm doing, and that's, to my mind, possibly the greatest speech of them all. I mean, I know I did Hamlet the other day, but to me this one trumps it, and that's the St. Crispin's Day speech from Henry V, or more correctly, the life of King Henry V, which is in Shakespeare's Histories. So what I'm going to do is quickly set the historical context, because a lot of people have kind of forgotten quite where this all came from, and then talk about the play, the structure of the play. It's one of the standard Shakespearean 5-act plays, and try and say what happens in each. Just to set the context. And then I'll do the St. Crispin's Day speech, which, as I said, is one of my favourite ones. I hope I get a little bit more passionate than I have done previously reading things. But then after that, what I'm going to do is then talk about the influences of that speech, specifically in things like media and cinema mainly. I don't really know too much about the actual performance aspect of it. So anyway, as I said, Henry V. Now, historically, where we are is early 15th century. So we're in the kind of 1415, give or take. I can't quite remember the exact date. It's during it's getting towards the tail end of the Hundred Years' War, which is between England and France. And Henry V himself was actually a relatively short-lived ruler. He only ruled from, I think, 1413 to 1422, and so 9 years, and he was only born in 1386, so he died quite young, 26, 27. No, 36, 37, sorry. But so he was when he ascended to the throne, he was still a youngster, and that actually plays into the play somewhat. But as I said, we're coming up towards the end of the Hundred Year War, early 15th century. Now, the play itself, which was written by Shakespeare, obviously dates vary, but it's again late 16th century, so 1599 is the official date, but we can take that with somewhat of a pinch of salt. And one of the things that a lot of people don't realise, it's part of what's called a tetralogy, which is a series of 4 linked works. Think of it as Star Wars Rogue One leading into the original Star Wars, leading into Empire Strikes Back, leading into the Return of the Jedi, although nowhere near as linked. So the 3 preceding plays, Richard III, Henry IV Part 1, Henry IV Part 2, leads into Henry V. Now, Henry V actually appears in the previous play, Henry IV Part 2, as a kind of spoiled little brattish kid. And Henry V shows him growing up and assuming the mantle of a king. So there's a character progression there, which audiences at the time would probably have been aware of. Now, the play itself is a fairly conventional Shakespeare structure. It's a 5-act play. There's a chorus comes in, I think, at each act, just to set the context, say where we are, and then we kick into the action. The first 2 acts are largely to do with King Henry agonising about, he feels it's his divine right, his right by family, his right by descendancy, that he should be the King of France. Now, these days you would just say, oh, you know, climb down off your high horse, why don't you? But that was the way it was then. And the first couple of acts are really all about him agonising whether he should go to war with France or not, as you do. There's also quite an interesting assassination subplot towards the end of the second act. I'm getting ahead of myself. So the first act's largely that. He kind of decides, right, we're going to have to go to war here. Partly spurred on, I think, by he kind of reaches out to the King of France at that point, whose name I've forgotten, and basically says, look, chum, I should be king, don't you know? And the king responds by sending him tennis balls as an indication of, you know, this is just some kid telling a fairly senior person what to do. That doesn't go down too well with Henry. Act 2 is when they start effectively building up for war. You know, England is getting enthused about this one. They've been at war with France on and off for 100 years, give or take. So they're building up for war. Yay, we are going to war, all that kind of stuff. Think First World War, in the original Kitchener photos, you know, your country needs you. The reality of the war, of course, somewhat different, but that's kind of what it was. It was a patriotic upsurge. This is where that assassination subplot comes in, because a couple of the dukes think this is actually a seriously bad idea, and they try and arrange for Henry's assassination. Henry uncovers it and deals with it very harshly. Which, again, some of the commentary I read this morning suggests this shows Henry stepping up to the mark, showing a ruthless streak. He's no longer this wee boy, which I think we've all figured out. Act 3 deals with the siege of Harfleur. So the English forces cross the Channel and they lay siege to a French port town called Harfleur. Sorry, I keep getting the name wrong. Which they win, but it pays a very heavy cost to the English forces. They're very, very badly not defeated. They win, but you know they have a lot of casualties. This is also where actually one of the other famous speeches from Henry V comes in, which is the "Once more unto the breach, dear friends, once more, or close the wall up with our English dead." So that's, you know, in there. That's, to my mind, the second best speech. But it's got the same point as the St. Crispian's Day speech, which we'll come up to, which is to kind of rally the troops. Then the next act is, so story-wise, Henry decides not to press on to Paris, given his forces are kind of being taking quite a battering. So they head up the coast towards Calais, and they kind of settle into a small French village called, spoiler alert, Agincourt. The French hear of this and they amass a big army and they march up to Agincourt. So Act 4 is the Battle of Agincourt, which is where the whole St. Crispian's Day speech comes in, which is the one I'm going to do for you in a minute. Now, again, spoiler alert, the English win. In fact, they rout the French. It remains one of the great military victories. Now, opinion varies as to quite how they managed to pull off this miraculous victory by, you know, the French had mass casualties and the English allegedly only had 30, but nobody's quite sure. That's what the play says anyway. But anyway, it's a great victory. Now, the final act is almost like a kind of epilogue, because we cut to a few years later and the English and French are kind of signing a treaty. I think it's the Treaty of Valois or Troyes, I can't remember, which is going to bring an end to the 100 Years' War. And also Henry V is trying to woo, actually that's it, he's trying to woo a French princess, Catherine of Valois, which, you know, if that happens, they unite the crowns, everybody's happy. Although, as history will tell you, England and France, never that happy. But there we go. So it's actually a kind of, in many ways, it's a nice, simple five-act play. It's a very simple play to understand. Structure's there. There's a couple of subplots. There's a wee bit of romance. Uh, Act 5, for example, Henry and Catherine can't speak each other's languages. They make clumsy mistakes. That kind of helps the romance. Now, I'll talk about this in the media section, which is after the speech. But, that aids the whole thing. So anyway, that's the story. That's the historical context. I'm aware time's getting on, so what I'll do now is just leap straight into the speech. So, again, we're in Act 4, Scene 2. This is the dawn of the battle. So, French are coming, battle's about to take part. Henry's troops are all kind of muttering a bit, going, ooh, not really too keen on this. We're vastly outnumbered. Our numbers are already down. What's going to happen here? And even among the nobility, so, the Duke of Cumberland, the Duke of Westmoreland, they're kind of muttering themselves. And so we'll start with the Duke of Westmoreland. He says, "Oh, that we now had here but 1/10,000 of those men in England that do no work today." Enter the king. "What's he that wishes so, my cousin Westmoreland? No, my fair cousin, if we are marked to die, we are now to do our country loss, and if to live, the fewer men the greater share of honour. God's will, I pray thee, wish not one man more. By Jove, I am not covetous for gold, nor care I who doth feed upon my cost. It yearns me not if men my garments wear, such outward things dwell not in my desires. But if it be a sin to covet honour, I am the most offending soul alive. No, faith, my cuz, wish not a man from England. God's peace, I would not lose so great an honour as one man more, methinks, would share from me for the best hope I have. Oh, do not wish one more. I rather proclaim at Westmoreland, through my host, that he which hath no stomach to this fight, let him depart. His passport shall be made, and crowns for convoy put into his purse. We would not die in that man's company that fears his fellowship to die with us. This day is called the Feast of Crispian. He that lives this day and comes safe home will stand a tiptoe when this day is named, and rouse him at the name of Crispian. He that shall live this day and see old age will yearly in the vigil feast his neighbours and say, tomorrow is St. Crispian. Then he will strip his sleeve and show his scars and say, these wounds I had on Crispian's day. Old men forget, yet all shall be forgot. But he'll remember with advantages what feats he did that day. Then shall names familiar in his mouth as household words, High the King, Bedford and Exeter, Warwick and Talbot, Salisbury and Gloucester, be in their flowing cups freshly remembered. This story shall a good man teach his sons. And Crispian shall ne'er go by from this day to the ending of the world, but we in it shall be remembered. We few, we happy few, we band of brothers. For he today that sheds his blood with me shall be my brother. Be he ne'er so vile, this day shall gentle his condition. And gentlemen in England now abed shall think themselves accursed they were not here, and hold their manhoods cheap, whilst any speaks that fought with us upon St. Crispian's day. Good stuff, I hope you agree, even with my clumsy reading. Now, that's not, I don't think, the first battle speech that Shakespeare wrote. I don't think it's the last either. But I'm now going to just briefly talk about specifically film because that's the one I know about. I'm not really a big I'm a big live comedy and music fan, but not actually proper theatre, I suppose. But so in terms of films, right? The first film version of this, or I think there were previous versions, but probably the most famous version of this was 1944's version by Laurence Olivier. Now, that was actually made the previous year, released in 1944, and it was towards the tail end of World War II. So Britain and Europe had been at war for 5 years at this point. And it was really a kind of rallying call. I mean, the film itself hasn't dated very well, as it is effectively, scratch out the French and put Nazis in there. That's effectively what it's doing. And it's also quite stagey, as you would expect. But nonetheless, it was a great wartime success. And then since then, it's not really been filmed until 1989's version, which is the version I love, which is the Kenneth Branagh version, which I think is brilliant. Now at this point, Branagh was he was a kind of enfant terrible at that point. He was a young guy, quite like Henry V. He was top of the world at that point. I think he was still married to Emma Thompson. So they were very much the kind of bright young things of their generation. And Henry V was one of his early Shakespeare adaptations. He's gone on to, I think half a dozen more, including Hamlet, which I touched on the other day. But really, if you haven't watched Branagh's version of Henry V, it's worth watching. It's really, really good. And now, having said that, if we go back to the Crispian's Day speech, now it's not difficult to understand the influence that has had, basically throughout plays, but also throughout movies. Now, you have not watched a movie where there's a rousing speech to the troops that isn't influenced by that. I'm going to highlight three that I know fairly well. There's obviously Braveheart and the speech Mel Gibson gives. If that isn't basically a rewrite of the St. Crispin's Day speech, then what is? There's also a speech that Maximus Decimus Corellius, also known as Russell Crowe, gives in Gladiator. Again, very similar. But the one that I'm just going to highlight before I sign off is the one that Kate Blanchett's Queen Elizabeth gives before the Battle of Tilbury on Elizabeth, the movie Elizabeth. Which is one of the few given by a woman. Now, obviously, Queen Elizabeth, quite the queen, and historically, that one I don't think actually happened. But we're in movie world here, so it's that one's worth tracking down. I mean, all those speeches are on YouTube, and there's dozens more. Anything where a kind of grizzled sergeant or a leader kind of turns to his or her men and exhorts them to greater achievements. It's basically down to Henry V. Right, and so that's I'm well over time here, so I'm going to wind this one up. To my mind, that's probably one of if not the greatest sequences in Shakespeare. So I hope I've set some kind of context for you. Hope you might have learned something new. And if you liked it, let me know. If you didn't like it, again, I'm trying my best here. So anyway, I'll try and come back, maybe late in the week with something else. Although I'm actually running out of plays I know well, or at least I know enough to talk about. But nonetheless, I'll try and come back with something, hopefully that you might enjoy. Okay, anyway, this is Mikey out. I hope you're all staying safe, and I'll catch up with you later. See you later.